we've got a new study today on woke. What does it mean to be woke? Do people know what the meaning is, and who considers themselves woke? Perhaps surprisingly, more than a quarter of Australians identify as woke. 31% said, though, they're not woke. A further 43% don't even know what the term means. Joining me live is Browne, author of this report that comes from Australia Institute, a left-leaning think tank. Thanks for your time today. I guess, first of all, the definitions are interesting. On one definition you gave to people, it was whether being alert to racial injustice, which is sort of the origin of the word, but then another one, what it's become for people, punishing people for thinking the wrong things, and I guess political correctness gone too far.
That's right, and thank you for having me, Tom. What we find is that Australians are unclear about what the term woke means. Overall, though, most, or about half, prefer that positive definition of being alert to racial injustice, and only about 30% choose the negative definition of being kind of censorious or punishing people for thinking the wrong things.
Right, so for now that's where people sit, slightly more agree the positive one. I was really interested in this breakdown though. We'll bring it up for our viewers on age. So if you're 18 to 29, according to this survey, 1,003 Australians surveyed, 49% say they are woke, pretty high. But if we go through the ages, 60 plus, so that's the middle column there, if you're considered woke, only 9%. Basically, it's just an age thing. If you're younger, you might think you are. The older you are, the less likely you are to be woke. Isn't this just like a lot of things? The kids are picking it up and the older people say they don't want a bar of it?
I think what's striking about the age figures is that you see a roughly consistent 30% not describing themselves as woke through the age differences. So part of that increase for those of younger age groups is that they're more familiar with the term as a whole. I think that's interesting.
And that's the right-hand column there, which has most people in those sort of 30s not woke. And so, as you point out, 59% of plus 60s don't know what it means, and then you get a lower percentage that think they are. But is it what's happening there? It's not cutting through. Older people sort of go, oh, I don't care about that. I'm set in my ways. I don't need to know this new terminology.
I think one thing that's interesting is looking at to what extent people define themselves as woke based on what they're hearing. In the Australian context, most use of the word woke in the media is critical. It's people using that negative definition of woke. But what you see from the stats is that hasn't really cut through with the public. And I think one of the reasons why that's the case is that we see the word woke overused. It's been used to describe everything from the Queen to the movement for Australia to become a republic, as well as the Wiggles, the Disney Corporation, and so on. So people are seeing that negative use of the word woke, but finding that it doesn't describe them. And I think that explains a lot of the identification with the positive definition.
So on the other side though, this again, the definition, the positive one you put forward, being alert to racial injustice, it strikes me as a sort of the origin of it, but people adjusting what they do, in particular organisations, you know, and all the inclusivity, it's gone well beyond just being alert to racial injustice. And this does lead people to sort of think, where does it end? Does every single thing need to have the same number of 100 different groups represented, and is that going too far? Do you get people who sort of think, you know, it starts off with a small point and it just seems to permeate all through our lives?
Yeah, I think that does point to the way that the term has been used and misused. So while it's true that there's this original definition, alert to racism, which particularly is salient in the United States, the import to Australia has been with the negative definition. But when you use the term so broadly, I think you hide the importance of these issues. So when you describe climate action and inclusive language and action on racial injustice, all as wokeness, you're really just saying that they're things you don't like. You're not pointing to.
So you don't think it, but what the people that initially wanted to sort of, you know, alert more people to racial injustice, hasn't it also been the case that similar people broadened it out and said, well, now we've got people talking about this, what about sexuality, what about gender, what about all these other elements? Hasn't that also been people supporting the term and the alertness, if you like, wanting to expand it as well?
Yeah, it's quite possible that there's some of that people see similarities between the struggle for racial justice for addressing gender inequality, for addressing homophobia and transphobia and so on, as being connected social movements. But I don't think that that fully explains this phenomenon, because we do see its critics go even beyond that idea of social inclusion to describe things like climate action, which really doesn't fall within the same bailiwick at all.
All right, we'll leave it there. I was surprised as well. One Nation voters, 22% apparently woke. I'd like to meet that One Nation, or the One Nation voters, but perhaps another time. Thank you for your time, Bill Browne. We're going to take a quick break.